Hello Hearties, today I want to talk to you about the importance of timing in your sales conversations because this is so important. Now this video today was actually inspired by a sales situation that I found myself in earlier in the year where I was the potential client. I had been out to California to attend a conference. While I was there, I met somebody who was offering a coaching service around a particular issue that I knew was a big area of growth and learning for me during this coming year 2019. So I already knew that I wanted some sort of help or support in this area. And I believed from having met her and spoken with her that just maybe she could be somebody who could be really great to help me. So I was going into that sales conversation with an open mind and with an interest and a desire to potentially work with her. Now, however, despite that, the investment was a slightly high price point. It was an $8,000 investment for a group coaching program or a group program. And I had some concerns. One of the questions in my mind was, it was like, I've met you and I like you and I trust you, but is what you're covering in this program in a group setting really going to give me what I need right now in my business and what I need this year? Another question I had in my mind was, this is a reasonable level of investment. I have other priorities and other projects in my business, in particular wanting to bring on more support through my team. Is this really the best investment for that money right now? And then the other big concern I had was about time. And with all of the other things going on in my business, could I really make the time to fully immerse myself in and do justice to this program and to this investment? So do you see, I was just like any of my clients when it comes to making a decision like this, and also just like any of your clients when it comes to making a decision like this. We all have the same sorts of concerns. Is this really right for me? Is it going to work for me? Is it going to be a good investment or is it going to be a waste of my money? And am I actually going to have time to make the most of it? We all have those concerns and they are really valid concerns. And the thing is, this is why I teach my 7 Steps to Yes sales conversations, because a really well-structured sales conversation is what helps us bring our clients to those decisions and helps them overcome those concerns. Now, the interesting part of this story is that even though I knew I needed support in this area, and even though I had already decided that this was going to be a core focus of mine for this coming year, I didn't end up joining her program. And this was all because there were a number of places in her sales process where, to be honest, I felt she didn't serve me as her potential client. I felt that she let me down in that process, which meant that I was unable to come to a decision. And as a result of that, she lost out on an $8,000 sale and another person in her program, and I lost out on potentially getting that support that I was looking for. And all of this because she didn't take me through an effective sales process. And of course, in reflecting on it afterwards, I could see a number of places where she'd gone wrong. And I decided to turn this into a series of videos so that you don't make the same mistakes she did. Now, in your case, it might not be an $8,000 sale that you lose out on. It might be an £800 sale, but the principle is just the same. And because I'm going to turn this into a series of videos, I'm actually, in my mind, I'm giving it the nickname, the California series. Whether I call it that on my blog or not, I don't know. But in my mind, this is the California series. This is the series of videos that were inspired by that sales conversation and by the sales process that surrounded it, so that, like I said, you can avoid making the same mistakes. And of course, I'm going to change the name of the business owner as well. I want to protect her, I want to respect her, so I'm changing her name to Tammy. That's what I'm going to be calling her. So the first of these videos is today's, and the topic is how to deal with timing in your sales conversations and why timing is so crucial. So I'm going to begin by telling you the story of what actually happened so that you can get a feel for that. And then I'm going to come back around and I'm going to teach you some teaching points for what she could have done instead, which will help you with your own sales conversations. So we booked a call. We had scheduled it for 6 p.m. on a UK evening. She was based out in the US somewhere, so it was earlier in the day for her. We got on the call, we were both on time, we hopped on and we jumped in straight away with some friendly chit-chat and rapport building. Now, we jumped straight into the chit-chat part. Tammy didn't set an agenda for the call, she didn't let me know what to expect from the call, and she definitely didn't give me an indication of how long that call might go on for. Now, remember, it was 6 p.m. in the UK, and because she hadn't scheduled it for a particular length, I'd blocked out an hour because I knew that it was going to be a sales conversation, and I knew that was about as long as we would need, maybe a little bit longer, possibly it might go on for another 15 to 30 minutes, but I hadn't really bargained on being on for any longer than that. So we jumped on and we began by having a lot of personal chit-chat. We talked about our lives, we found that we had a few things in common in our personal lives and we got really stuck into talking about that. Now, this is not a good idea at the beginning of your sales conversation. I'm not going to go into why now. I'm going to make that one of the later videos in this series. Now, of course, I was really enjoying this interaction, but it ate into the time that we needed to have the conversation that we were there to have. And what happened was we didn't even start talking about my business until more than 30 minutes in. And we didn't really get onto her program and what was contained in her program until we had been on that call for 2 full hours. Now, she didn't take me through a structured sales conversation. Now, that's not to say that nothing we talked about was useful. A lot of it was very useful, but without a structure to the conversation, it meant that the conversation sort of meandered, and that was how the conversation ended up going on for 2 hours. Now, it only stopped at 2 hours because I made the call to end it. At 2 hours, she still hadn't explained what was included in her program, and she still hadn't talked to me about the investment. Now, by this point, I was really flagging. It was the end of my working day. I'd already had quite a full day. I'd done quite a few group mentoring calls with my members and clients that day. I was really flagging. And remember, I'd only scheduled in an hour. So by now it was past 8 p.m. UK. I was really hungry, I was really tired, and I wasn't able to focus on that conversation anymore. And just at this point, she was moving in to really get into talking about her program, and she started asking me some really deep and searching coaching questions, which would have been absolutely perfect earlier in the conversation. But the problem was that by after 8 p.m. and a 2-hour call, my brain just couldn't focus. So she was asking me these deep and searching questions, and I just couldn't go there. Do you know what I mean when you're just searching? It was like I was blank. I couldn't go there, I couldn't dig deep, I couldn't search, and I just ended up saying, oh, I don't know. You know, it was really, like, my answers were really pathetic, really. It was just like, oh, I don't know. But it was only because I was tired. Now, because she still hadn't mentioned time, and I knew that so many of my questions and concerns that I had come to that call with had still not been answered, I realised that if we were going to conclude the call in a satisfactory way, we were going to be on for a lot longer than we were. And so I brought the call to an abrupt close. I told her I was too tired to continue, that I hadn't allowed more than 2 hours for that call and I needed to go, and that I wasn't really able to focus because we'd been on for so long. I was losing my ability to focus and do justice to the call. So remember, I wasn't a no, I was just I'm too tired to continue this conversation. So there was still plenty of time for her to turn it around. So more on that in future videos. But here are the lessons that I want you to take from that example for your own sales conversations. So number 1, and I include this in the 7 Steps to Yes sales process, and I cannot stress this enough, set your agenda at the beginning. That's why I teach you to do it. Let the other person know what to expect and reconfirm how long the call is going to be for. So reconfirm how long you've scheduled the call in, and double check that they still have that time available. Because the last thing you want is to miss out on a potential client because you thought you had another 20 minutes to go, but they suddenly have to run out the door on the school run when you thought you had plenty of time left. So that's the first one. It's really important to set that agenda to reconfirm the length of the call so that both of you understand what you're working towards. And neither of you is going to have to jump off abruptly, which is what I did. Yes, we'd been on for 2 hours, but from her point of view, I was her potential client and I abruptly ended that call before she'd brought it to a conclusion. Rule number two is aim to contain your sales conversation to a maximum of a 1 hour conversation. And don't let it drift over 90 minutes unless the client has already in principle indicated that they are interested in going ahead and you are either they're a clear yes and you're using that extra time to wrap up the details and take payment, or maybe they're a yes in principle but there are some things that you need to explore or some questions that you need to ask. I'm going to talk more about I'll talk more now actually about this. So I know this from personal experience, from being on the receiving end of long sales conversations. In every case where I've personally been on a sales conversation that has gone past 90 minutes without me coming to a decision, I have lost focus and I've been unable to come to a decision. Now, this is not just me. Yes, I do have sort of energy brackets, if you like, and there's only so much energy I have. Like 2 hours is about as long as I can go for on any sort of call, whether it's a group call or a one-to-one call. But this is not unusual. There's actually been plenty of research done that shows that we have these concentration windows. Everybody has a concentration window of between 90 minutes and 2 hours. It varies for everybody, but it's within that range. And so when we push ourselves, even when it's just when we're working on our own project, if you push yourself to focus on one thing beyond that 90-minute to 2 hour window, we lose focus. That's just what we do as humans. We're all the same. And so by the time we've gone over 90 minutes, I have always lost the clarity of focus that I need if I'm going to come to a clear decision about whether this is a good investment for me or not. And so in every time where somebody has kept me talking past 90 minutes, I've ended up saying I need to go away and think about it. And the reason for that is because I just need to go away, sleep on it and come back to it with a fresh clarity and a sort of fresh brain the next day. The next point that I want to share, point number 3, is follow a structure. I'm going to talk more about this in future videos in this California series, but I can't stress how important it is for you to follow a structure with your sales conversations, because this is how you achieve point number 2. Now, how can you keep a conversation to an hour if both of you are meandering off on tangents? If you don't have a structure, that's exactly what's likely to happen. You're both going to meander off. You're going to talk about some really interesting things, some really enjoyable and some really useful things. But the problem is that it becomes really hard to manage the length of that call and that conversation if you don't have a structure in place. So it's really important that you follow that structure. And if you are not currently following a structure for your sales conversations, then head over to my website at sellingfromtheheart.com. You can sign up to get my 7 Steps to Yes sales conversations training. It's absolutely free. It's 35 minutes in total, and it will give you that structure for those conversations. The next point is to identify your client's concerns within the first half of the call, if not the first 40 minutes. Because here's the thing, if you don't know the client's concerns, then how can you address them? And what will happen is that that's where you could end up being like Tammy and continuing with this really quite long-winded conversation where you're covering things that actually are nice. She covered some things that were really useful, but they were not the things that I needed to know at that time in order to make my decision. And so had she spent some time in the first half of the call uncovering what concerns I had about potentially joining her program, I would have been very happy to list them in order to help her help me make my decision. And we could have spent that valuable time instead exploring whether the program really was right for me, whether it was really going to give me what I needed, whether it was the right time for me with the other things I had going on, and whether it was a good investment for me right now. And we didn't cover, so those were the four key things that I needed addressed in order to bring me to that decision. And within that 2-hour window, we didn't cover one single one of those. So make sure you get those concerns collected early so that you can have those conversations to address them. And then the final one, or actually not quite the final but one, is manage your timings by checking in regularly. So one of the reasons that I had to jump off that call at 2 hours, and even if she'd kept it to 90 minutes, she still wouldn't have brought me to that decision. I've already explained why. One of the ways that you do that is by checking in from time to time about the time. So just like at the beginning, you reconfirm with your potential client that you've scheduled an hour to have this call, and it might be less in your case, maybe it's a little longer in your case, depending, you might find that you always need a little bit longer. But you also do the same sort of check-in as you're going through. So for example, you might get to the point where you've got 20 minutes left. So you might say, we've got about 20 minutes left out of the hour we said we'd spend. I just want to make sure we cover everything we need to, and you can bring things back on track. Again, at 5 minutes to the hour, you could say, I notice we're coming up to the hour, but it sounds as though we've still got things to talk about. I'm happy to continue for a bit longer if you are. How long have you got? And if your potential client says, I can just stay on for another 15 minutes, then it's important that you wrap up and get to the point within that time. Now, I just want to re-stress here that you are unlikely to bring somebody to a decision in a sales conversation that goes on over 90 minutes. And here's the thing. Sometimes your potential client comes to your conversations already knowing they want to work with you. That happens quite frequently. And if that's the case, your client won't want to have to go through a 90-minute plus conversation with you. So more than likely, they will bring it to a head. So even if you're letting it go on, more than likely, they'll bring it to a head and they'll say, look, how does it work? How do I pay? How much is it? Can we just do it? If a call goes on over an hour, it's usually because the client is not sure about working with you and still needs your help in deciding. And I would go so far as to say that if you haven't managed to bring your potential client to a decision to work with you within that hour, maybe an hour and 15, then your chances of doing it by continuing to stay on longer only decrease rather than increase. The only exception to that I find is in situations where somebody has said yes, they do want to go ahead and work with me, but there are just extra things to explore. So sometimes it's the case where somebody is serious about working with me, but they're not sure if they can afford it, or they might have a lot of questions, so there can be reasons why. So what I find very often is my sales conversations can be done and dusted within an hour, and this is even when I'm selling a £5,000 level program. But that if the person is serious about going ahead and we're just exploring final concerns, maybe talking around the money issue, maybe setting up the details and collecting payment, that's when the call can sometimes stretch to an hour and a half. But I'm never on a sales conversation longer than an hour and a half. Now, the final piece of advice that I would have on this video today is that if you find that your conversation really is going on over 90 minutes, then rather than trying to force your client to make a decision at a time when they've already got mental fatigue, it's going to be far more effective to you to actually schedule another call. So you'll have more success if you acknowledge that it has been a long call. Now, you may choose to wrap up and finish by introducing your program, maybe introducing your pricing. But I would acknowledge that it has been a long call and give them the option of going away to process and thinking about it with a clear and fresh brain, and scheduling another call for them to come back with any questions and for you to help them make that final decision when they're feeling more fresh, if that makes sense. So timings in your sales conversation, so important. And because the timing is so important, and because you are so unlikely to bring somebody to a decision, so just let me recap on that just to make it clear. Your client might have come to a decision within 1 hour to 90 minutes. If you've brought them to a decision and your call goes on a little bit longer because you're just helping them through some final concerns or wrapping up details, that's absolutely not a problem. But if you have been on a call for 90 minutes and your potential client has still not made a decision, either way, they're still completely unclear whether it's right for them or not. Continuing is not going to serve either of you. And so, like I said, my recommendation is that you get really good at having these structured sales conversations and managing the timing of the conversations as your primary one, but that in the event that you do misjudge it or get it wrong, if you realize you've gone over 90 minutes and the client is nowhere near ready to make a decision, that you don't keep pushing on, that you acknowledge it's been a long call, that you give them a certain amount of information to process, that you allow them a chance to go off and think about what questions they have, and you schedule a follow-up call. So I hope this has been useful for you today, and I look forward to recording you the second video in the California sequence. Lots of love to you. Bye-bye.